Welcome to this week's Mailbag. Remember, these are comments and questions you guys leave on the channel that I do my humble best to answer or throw to the wider community for them to answer for you. Yes, the light is fading rapidly. Storm Dennis is upon us. It is rapidly throwing lots of wind and water on the UK. It's definitely the southern end of the UK, which is where I am at the moment. So we're probably looking for a very wet evening and wet tomorrow, I suspect. Should make travelling to the office very easy. Not. So we're going to start with the first one here. And due to printer problems, I'm going to have to read these off my phone. The first one is from Dejan Sirik. I don't know whether that's a he or a she. So, and they write: is it possible to dump one single program from a Korg T1, T2, T3 to a computer? And this is in response to my T1 videos I did in September 2017 about restoring SysX to and from the computer. Short answer, no. Long answer. The T1 allows you to copy single program combinations, programs, and sequences to and from the disk. Okay, and that's kind of its main sort of storage medium, not SysX. It also allows you to dump information from the T series to the M series and from the M series to the T series machines, but it does not, and it does that over MIDI, but it does not allow you to dump a single program combination from the T1 to a computer. So that's the downside, and I think it was just done like that. When you're doing a SysX dump, the T1 just dumps the lot. Okay, so if you want to manipulate the contents of a T1 SysX dump on your computer, then you need to go and get Sys Librarian, something like PGC Tools for Korg, and in that you can move programs around between banks and start to sort of get things in the right place. And the great thing about PGC Tools is when you move a combination or a program, PGC Tools remaps the combination of the program for you. Otherwise, when you do it on your keyboard, the keyboard will still, or the combination will still go to the old program location because that's where it thinks its tones are. So quite often Sys Librarian in this instance is a worthwhile investment. The next one comes from Michael Walls. And this is in response to, it's quite a long one actually. Let's have a look. The MX-1, the USB ports. Explained video I did right at the beginning of this year, January 2000. This year, even last year, January 2019. And Michael writes, "Thank you so much for taking the time to answer my inquiries. The thing I like about the MX-1 is the fact that I can hook up my JX-03 and JP-08. What I want to be able to do is have a controller that allows me to integrate my entire setup, save rigging it up an audio interface directly into the Mac. Cloud could you recommend a decent mixer controller I can sync all my boutiques and have Logic Pro X that isn't an MX-1? All the best, Mike." Actually, funny enough, Gary from the Death Beats is trying to do something very similar with his rig, and he will be sort of letting me know how his rig is turning out because he's looking for a doorless setup going forward. And this is kind of what follows on from a previous question relating to using the Surface controller to control Logic Pro. Now, the MX-1, although it purports to be a Surface controller, it's not really. Well, I struggle to get on with it as a Surface controller. And I suppose the issue is really how much do you want to spend? At the higher end, there is something like the Mackie MCU Pro, which is an 8-fader unit that can be expanded in blocks of 8. Not cheap. You're likely to spend about £1,000 on the initial unit, and then about the same for each expansion block you buy. I don't know what the total number of expansion blocks are, but I've seen a picture of it with at least 2 expansion blocks, so that makes it 24 channels. Then at the other end, you could try something like the Korg Nano Control 2. which is sort of an entry-level Surface controller under £100. And funny enough, I use one of the nano controllers on the Kronos. I use the pads, the one with the pads, and I find that extremely useful. But I don't use it as a Surface. So the real problem with Surface controllers is that we all develop different ways of working, and not one Surface controller works the same for one person as does the other. And I found that to my cost as I've been going through my journey. I've bought a number of units over the years that I just could not get on with. And for some people, it's the simplest controller really works well. And for others, they need to assign every control in the world to the controller, and therefore they like a knob and a button and fader for everything that's going on. So my advice really is to sort of get yourself down to a good retailer and have a look at the devices. And the bottom line is, a good retailer wants to make a sale, and they will sit you in front of these devices and allow you to plug and play the different devices in and out, and just get comfortable with how the device works. And the cheapest device may be the one that's best for you. Now, personally, at the moment, I've played with it a couple of times, and I think it is a very, very good unit for me. Although I am hesitant to go and spend some money on it, but I'm looking at the Behringer X-Touch unit, which is about £380. And looking at how this unit works and the experience I've had with it, you get a whole lot of Surface control for not a lot of money. So that's kind of where I am on that. In terms of the other question relating to just hooking up the JX03 and JP08, the MX-1 has kind of cornered that market if you're just looking for USB functions. There's nothing else on the market that really sort of does it the way the MX-1 does, in terms of allowing you to plug in through USB, allowing you to move the audio, and allowing you to move faders and fade things in and out that way. I'm not aware. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just don't know. I don't know of anything else that actually meets that functional criteria, that accepts the USB from these devices and allows you to do that sort of stuff. The MX-1 also provides DNA conversion, so digital to analog conversion, in the mixer. But at the end of the day, that's kind of what the MX-1 was designed to do. It sort of was designed to be in this sort of DJ space, doorless space, really. Because, again, going back to the start of this, as a Surface controller, for me, it didn't work. The next one comes from Daniel Catlin, again in response to the same MX-1 video. And he says, "Hi, I've got a SE-02 hooked up to one of the USB ports on the MX-1. Can I get the MX-1 to trigger the SE-02 from its start-stop button like it does with the ARIA stuff?" So I haven't got an SE-01. I've had one on loan, but I don't own one, so I can't go and test this. But my understanding from Roland is that all these boutique style devices were all designed to work in the same way in terms of exchanging start-stop commands over MIDI or over USB MIDI, depending on how you got things hooked up. So as long as the SE-02 is down chain from the MX-1, if you press the start-stop button on the MX-1, theoretically it should work. Now, if it doesn't work, then I think we probably have to start looking at the MX-1, and we have to be, sorry, not the MX-1, the SE-02, and we have to be slightly careful, because the SE-02, while it looks like a standard boutique device, it has an independent power supply, so it's not quite designed and built the same way as the other boutiques are. But I cannot see why Roland would implement something different on the SE-02 from what they've implemented on the other boutique devices, given the whole thing is that they were meant to sort of be standard start-stop controls. It would be a little bonkers, but then I wouldn't put it past them. If I were doing this and and I needed to really know, I'd take my SE-02 down to my local stockist, and I would plug it into their MX-1 and see what happens if you played around with things like different CC controls, etc., and see if the SE-02 is receiving on the wrong channel. That's easily rectified. Easily rectified. Okay, the next one comes from Talent O Cubano, and he writes, "Thank you. Hi, have you tried to connect an iConnectivity interface?" Again, in response to the same MX-1 ports explained video I did in January 2019. First thing I'd say is you haven't said which iConnectivity interface we are talking about, because iConnectivity have released a number of interfaces since I bought my ME-010 a few years back. And at the time when I bought my ME-010, iConnectivity was a breath of fresh air, I have to be honest. So I do have the ME-010. I predominantly use it for 5-pin DIN MIDI, the old style cables, because I have a lot of legacy synthesizers in my studio, and I connect those up to my computer using this device, and it allows me to route MIDI signals. It's very, very good for that. Have I used the MX-1 through this interface using MIDI? The answer to that is yes, and I had no problems. But this was the 5-pin DIN interface, not a USB interface, so I was actually passing MIDI through the MX-1. And I have a feeling that you're talking about one of the later interfaces, even though my Mio is only 4 years old. Yeah, that's how quick time moves on. The newer units are a combination of DIN, 5-pin DIN, and USB MIDI now. And I don't have that interface to provide a response. But what I will say is that the MX-1 is not a truly class compliant device, as in you have to have drivers on the end device to make it work. And because of that, the iConnectivity will support class compliant devices. It won't support non-class compliant devices. So I'm going to sort of say I don't think this will work, but my advice is to take your MX-1 down to the local toy shop and get the retailer to plug it into their Mio interface and see if you can make it work that way. But I suspect the answer is it's not going to work. If you liked the content of the video you've just seen, please give it a thumbs up. It just helps the YouTube algorithm with its selection process. If you want to leave a comment, please feel free to do that as well. Down below somewhere should be the ability to do that. I do try to respond to all the comments that are raised on the channel. Sometimes it takes me a few weeks because of what I'm doing, and I'm getting more and more comments and questions raised on the channel, so it just takes sometimes a little bit of time to do a bit of research. If you want to be notified when I put more rants, mailbags, and videos about this sort of legacy tech and even modern tech on the channel, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell icon, and you'll be notified by YouTube when stuff happens. I try to publish at least 2 times a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. Until next time, bye-bye.